Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. In this video, I just wanted to discuss remote work. At the time of filming this, we're in the middle of the COVID-19, the coronavirus crisis, and there's been this unprecedented push to work from home. And I thought this would be a timely video in that if you're an analyst and now you're working from home, how can you maintain that remote work culture? Well, I would say the number one thing that stands in the way of people actually keeping or negotiating a remote setup is that you need to stay productive. And the number one tip that I have in terms of how to actually prove this to your manager, which I guess before I get into that, your manager can't see you working, which is probably the number one reason we have, an in-person cubicle culture. Just because your manager can walk by and if you look busy, then he's going to feel good or she's going to feel good that, this employee is putting in their time. And especially them just seeing you at the office. But if you're at home, you could just be playing video games the entire time. And I would say the number one reason or the number one way that you can actually keep this remote setup is to start tracking your time more effectively. Personally, I'm using Harvest app, which is a time management software to track my consulting hours for my clients. Now, about 6 months ago now, I switched from a project-based kind of setup for my agency to one that's more retainer-based. And I actually almost lost a client recently because I was just sending them a bill at the end of the month. And they were having a hard time justifying my monthly fee because they weren't seeing the results. So the way that you can actually show your results is to track your time. And then also, you should probably be setting up at least a weekly meeting with your manager to talk about all the tasks that you've completed. So that is a great substitute from them seeing you working hard in person at the office. So if you're staying on top of your projects, tracking your time, they're going to feel a lot more confident that you're actually getting the job done and you're not just taking money from that organization. So I think that's the number one tip that I have in terms of how can you negotiate and how can you keep a remote work setup. In fact, Tyler Loveman talked about this in our podcast episode with him, where he was working, I think, for a big bank, and he negotiated 1 day a week working remotely. And he proved that he was actually more effective at home than in the office because he was having people stop by his desk. It wasn't as quiet at his workstation. So he gradually worked from just 1 day a week to 2 days a week to then 3 days a week to then all of a sudden he just completely cut the cord and started working 100% remote. Now, the COVID crisis is actually a little bit of, I don't want to say it's a blessing, but if your goal is to negotiate a remote working environment, the COVID crisis is like the perfect catalyst for you to get to that final step that Tyler got to. So it's on you now to track your time, to be extra productive, and really earn that right to work remotely. I thought that was just something to talk about now. We're going to continue posting, the regular podcast episodes, but I've been getting questions over and over again of how can I get a remote analyst job? And I think that this COVID crisis is actually going to show a pretty big shift in work culture because not only are the employees going to be happier working at home, working on their own time, but also too, if half of a company's workforce can work remotely, that's half as much real estate they have to rent in terms of office space. So that pretty much wraps up the video. This was just kind of a rant, but I thought it would be somewhat insightful for you guys. I'll see you in the upcoming podcast episodes and YouTube videos. Have a good one.